This is the mess I am gearing up to talk about. I just spent about 6 months living tiny with my husband and my 3-year-old daughter in about 300 square feet. And if you want more details about this experience, click the card above and you can watch a few additional videos to get more info. But today I just wanted to go over some pros to tiny living and some cons. The very first pro is obvious. Rent is dirt cheap / free. We lived in a room at my parents' house and I made our entire living area in that bedroom and the bathroom that was adjacent to it. And they basically didn't charge us any rent. It was such a huge help to us for my parents to offer to let us stay there and to save up money and figure out where we were going next, since we just moved from Florida to Kentucky. For anyone, if you're renting a small space, it's going to be less expensive, and that is a huge pro. You can furnish a tiny place very quickly because not much furniture fits in a tiny space. So furnish it quickly, you can spend a little bit more money on it, and you can have really nice furnishings, and it's definitely a pro. In the same vein, it cleans up like that. I mean, you get your mind set to it, work for like 15 minutes and you can have the place spotless. In our situation, it was really close to family. It was basically multi-generational living. And that was definitely a pro because my daughter got to be around grandparents and an aunt and then other family that we have in the area, which was great. It is near impossible to amass clutter in a tiny space. It's practically impossible. It's really difficult to amass clutter when you don't have a place to put it. This one is huge to me. You don't want to stay inside. It's so small. You just want to go outside. You want to spend time outdoors. You don't want to be cooped up in a little space. And I love that because I'm prone to stay inside when I'm in a house that's too big. And lastly, it pushes creativity like you would not believe. Just figuring out where to put your stuff is like problem solving 101, and you seriously like get a high when you're figuring out how to be more efficient with your space, and it just sparks this snowball effect that makes you want to be more and more creative and entices you to try out even more stuff in order to make your tiny living area comfortable and something you really enjoy being in. Now for the cons. For us, we had no real kitchen set up. You did see my refrigerator. We had a microwave on top of that. I had a steamer under the sink, which I would put on our prep table. And then I also had a mini convection oven, but it was more like a toaster oven. And I would use all of those, but it would have been so much nicer to have a little dedicated kitchen, but we weren't gonna do that in that space since it was just temporary. It is very easy to get messy in a tiny space. I mean, if you have a few pieces of clothing and a couple of toys laying on the floor, oh boy, I mean, it's just taking up everything. And so that's not so much fun. It's not exactly ideal for children. It's totally doable, but even when I showed you the little tiny nursery that I had my daughter in, there were all of these comments basically that were constructive criticism telling me to be careful about this, be wary of this, don't do this, try to do this. And it was a lot of stuff, and I implemented as much as I could, but honestly it was just kind of difficult to make it just right for her. I know it's totally doable, and if we were there long term, then we could have switched things up to make it more conducive to her, but in the meantime, it was more difficult having a child in the tiny space. And one of the last cons I'm going to mention is that you can't really get away from your family outside of leaving the space itself. And for me, being pregnant, especially in my first trimester, I am very sensitive to smells and especially people, and that made things difficult. My pregnancy hormones, they just make me sick and mean and angry, and I'm sure everybody in my immediate family didn't want to be around me all of the time either, and so that was a little bit of a con as well. All in all, I'm so glad I got to live in this tiny space. It's something I've always wanted to do, and it wasn't a full-on tumbleweed tiny house, but I think it might be as close to tiny living as I'm ever gonna get. set. It was a really fun experiment and I learned so much. Not to mention, you all taught me so much through the comments just by making suggestions. And I feel like it's really going to benefit me when I'm in my next space when it comes to decorating and being efficient and being safe and things like that. So I appreciate it. If you have any desire to live small, even temporarily, I say try it out. So thank you for watching and I'll see you all next time. Bye.